Have you ever had a particular character select screen catch your attention? Maybe you're at a friend's house or you're in an arcade back in the day, you hear the music blasting, or you happen to glance over and you see a couple really cool looking characters on the screen. Then it entices you to walk over and want to try the game out. This is both a small yet huge part of the experience. At its core, really it's just a menu. But at the same time, it's a very memorable piece of art that adds to the overall presentation and feeling of the game. Today we're looking at my favorite character select screens that have stuck with me over the years. I've never really seen any YouTuber cover this topic, so I thought it would be kind of interesting to look back on. These are in no particular order, they're just going to be categorized by favorites and honorable mentions. But really they're all my favorites, otherwise they wouldn't be on this video. So let's take a look. I'm going to take you for a ride.
Your hero.
After that pun, you know I had to make this one first. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. This is the PS2 version you're seeing because that's the first version I had, though shortly after I sold it and got the Dreamcast version. Seeing a screenshot of this game's roster is the sole reason why I went and bought this game to begin with. First I had Capcom vs. SNK 2, and then very shortly after, when I saw this had an even crazier roster, I had to have it. No regrets. It has an interesting soundtrack to say the least, but it sticks in your head. Did I mention the character select just looks badass in general? There's no telling how many hours I've spent on this game. I had a childhood friend, Cody, who would always be at my house playing this with me on the Dreamcast, damn near every other day. I eventually memorized his patterns to the point where I would beat him when I was only half paying attention and talking to somebody on Skype. Good times.
Welcome back to the stage of history.
Soul Calibur. I had no idea this even existed at the time when I first saw it, and I was all about fighting games. Still am. But I was on summer vacation in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, around the year 2000, maybe 2001, something like that. And there's this particular arcade that I always went to called Fanny Farkle's. Loved that place as a kid. I played Tekken 3 for the first time there, but this time it was Soul Calibur. I was walking down the street, not really paying attention, and I just happened to glance over, and there was the machine right in the front of the place. And I saw either Mitsurugi or Siegfried on the screen. I had Soul Blade on the PS1 already, so when I recognized them, I immediately stopped what I was doing and I had to go give it a try. A sequel to Soul Blade. This made me so excited, and it looked amazing. The arcade version still had PS1 style graphics, but the animation was so fluid compared to Soul Blade. And when I played it on the Dreamcast for the first time, I'm surprised nobody saw a mushroom cloud floating above my head. This and the second game, in my opinion, are still the best in the series to this day. By the way, if you like cute and nerdy things like this mug here, or this cat, check out the Shirt Horde. The link is in the description. The cat's not included, by the way. X-Men vs. Street Fighter is definitely up there as being one of my favorite character selects. It's probably in my top 3. When I played this game for the first time, my parents would take me to this barcade, and they had this game there. They'd give me like, I don't know, $10 in quarters or something, go play pool and get plastered on one side of the place while I was on the other side playing this game and Tekken 2 over and over. The one thing that really stuck out to me about this game though is the way the arcade cabinet was designed. It wasn't your typical stand-up arcade, it was a bit wider, and the screen was tilted way back compared to most machines. I tried to find a decent picture of what I'm talking about online, but this potato quality image was the best I could come up with. But the way this cabinet was designed, combined with the already slanted look of the character select, it gave it a lot more depth, almost a pseudo 3D look in a way. You'd really have to see it in person, not on a console, to really grasp what I'm talking about. The music of this game, the overall presentation and look of the sprites, the cool static backgrounds of the characters on the character select, this game had it all, and the roster was amazing too. This is the first game in the Versus series I played, and man, what a way to start. I still love firing this up from time to time on the Sega Saturn, and I'm looking forward to playing this on the new Capcom Fighting Collection that's coming out as well. Battle Arena Toshinden 3 was a game I first saw in an Electronic Gaming Monthly magazine. A neighbor of mine had a subscription to EGM, and after he'd read them, he would give them to my brother, then my brother would give them to me. Once I got those issues in my hand, I would read the same issues over and over. Not sure why, but I did. And at the time, I didn't have a PlayStation or a Saturn, and I also wasn't on the internet, so seeing previews of all these games was a whole different experience. A screenshot they took of the character select is what piqued my interest on this game, and I kept looking at the article. At the time, I didn't know of any other fighting game that had more characters than this in the roster, and there are some really cool designs here. I knew nothing about this series at all outside of the magazine article, and eventually for Christmas I did get the PS1, and it came with Tekken 3, Dynasty Warriors, and Toshinden 3. Hell of a selection to start off with, I think. The Toshinden series has definitely not aged well. It has pretty clunky controls, but if you can get past that, they're still fun to come back to occasionally.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 4.
Tekken 4 is a game that I was actually initially disappointed with. Coming from Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag Tournament, I was expecting a larger roster and a leap in graphics. I actually think a lot of the character models on Tekken Tag look better than 4's. However, the character select I think is the best in the series on Tekken 4. It's the only one in my opinion that has what looks like an attempt to make ultra-realistic character portraits, and instead of the selection being a straight horizontal line like the rest of the series, it's in the middle this time to make room for those portraits. They're right in your face on this one, really close up. The whole game just had a very unique feel to it all around, and the robot-sounding announcer guy was pretty cool too, instead of just being the same dude yelling for the past 3 or 4 games. It's a small touch, but the smoky background and the sound effects when you're moving the cursor just ties it all together too. Tekken 4 actually went from being my least favorite to one of my favorites in the series, easily top 3, mostly because of just the different presentation from the rest. It has a more urban feel, a very memorable soundtrack, and it's the only one that gives you obstructions in the middle of the level to push your opponent against, so it adds a little bit more strategy than the others.
You win.
This is definitely one of the coolest character selects out there, with one of the coolest rosters. Darkstalkers 3, or Vampire Savior, or Vampire Hunter, or Vampire Chronicle. For the love of God, pick a name, Capcom. But this one pretty much speaks for itself. The whole game, especially the select screen, has a killer soundtrack that sounds like nothing else. Really cool sound effects. Has a sort of Castlevania vibe, of course, because vampires. It's something that really gets you pumped to beat your opponent's ass. The hexagonal layout's pretty interesting as well. Not really much to say about this game other than I've dumped a ton of hours into it also. Pretty much every version of it. Capcom, please bring back this franchise. Ultra Super Street Fighter 6 Special Definitive Edition Mark II can wait. Fighting games don't get much more metal than Killer Instinct. Everything about this game is killer. See what I did there? Anyway, I first saw this game on a Donkey Kong Country promotional VHS that Nintendo Power put out back in the day. And at the very end of that video, there's this teaser for Killer Instinct, and I was thinking, wait, what's this? What was I not supposed to see? A short while later, I got to play the Super Nintendo version, and I couldn't really tell the difference between that and the arcade version at the time because I didn't know the arcade version existed. That VHS only really showed a couple seconds of footage, but man, another true banger for the history books this game was. A year or two later, I got to play the arcade version, and that's a whole nother level of awesome too. The cool rotating 3D character models, the lightning effects in the background, and both versions had the ability to change your color palette, which back then was kind of a big deal, or at least I thought it was. And the Versus screen with the FMVs was pure badassery. How can you not like Killer Instinct?
Great! I knew that groove was in Millionaire Fighting 2000.
In a similar vein to Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the biggest reason why I picked this game up when it came out was the roster. It's insane. I also didn't play the first Capcom vs. SNK game, so when I saw this was a thing, I jumped at it. Two unlikely rivals squaring off against each other in a game. I love it. And the presentation is like no other. From the aesthetic to the announcer to the soundtrack, they did their best to make it feel like you're really part of something big. The roster in this game is damn near flawless, which is probably the reason why there's not been a third game added to the series. I'd love to see a third game with a similar roster count. Throw in some more franchise characters like Dante from Devil May Cry or Marco from Metal Slug. Both in terms of presentation and as a whole, CVS 2 is seriously a 10 out of 10 game for me. There is nothing I would change. For our first honorable mention, we have Bloody Roar 2. Nothing really sets the select screen apart from the rest, but the music to it is amazing.
Select your watercraft, please.
What do you know, a non-fighting game. Wave Race 64. This game just makes you want to go to the beach, and the music is so fitting. I find it kind of relaxing too. If you don't know Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, either you were born yesterday or something's wrong with you. This is the second game, it needs no introduction. Definitely a staple of my childhood and probably yours too. It all started with that demo disc from Pizza Hut. Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution. This is pretty much the only good looking character select in the entire series. It reminds me of Tekken 4 a bit because of the extremely detailed character portraits. Definitely one to remember. King of Fighters 99. I found the PS1 version of this in a bargain bin, I believe at Sam's Club. Never had played any KOF game before then, and both the cover art as well as the screenshot of the character select on the back is what made me buy it. I played Fatal Fury before then, so I knew about a few characters in it, but it was cool having so many new faces that I'd never seen before. The select screen for Streak Hoverboard Racing is textbook 90s and 2000s. It sort of reminds me of the Tony Hawk games in a way, except it's way futuristic. Last and certainly not least, Tekken 3. This set the fighting game world on fire. Another 10 out of 10 game. So that about does it. I hope you enjoyed the video, hope it was an interesting topic, and as always, this is a discussion. Please leave a comment below, tell me your story, tell me what your favorites are, how you came across them. And until next time, horns up.